We all know what the Trump administration did this week. Now we're getting dribs and drabs. And by the way, I said about 18 months ago on this show that people would be hearing from Jeffrey Epstein. And then I made clear he's not alive. I was never suggesting that. But I knew of tapes of Jeffrey Epstein that would get released. And let's just say I stand by my story. I mean it still 100%. Just stand by, okay? By the way, some already were released right before the election that were largely ignored because it was right before the election. But they're not done. There will be more. And you can trust me. Trust me. I don't say things.
On Truth Decryptor today, we dive deep into the explosive revelations surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein FBI files, where damning names are deliberately suppressed and false accusers blur the narrative. Alan Dershowitz pulls no punches, exposing the controversy over hidden documents and redacted lists protecting powerful elites. Let's break this down together and uncover what the government won't admit.
Things I can't back up, okay? So that's happening. In any event, back to the actual substance. There's a clip of Alan Dershowitz that's gone totally viral. It was from an interview he gave Sean Spicer back in March. I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to update it for you. And then we're going to talk about what, if anything, it all means for what we're supposed to believe about the FBI's files. Here it is.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accused.
This reveals a tangled web of accusers and accused, highlighting how the truth is muddled by secrecy and legal protections that shield high-profile players and even false accusers alike.
And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them, but they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money, and those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed.
Very interesting. Everyone, that's sort of a Rorschach test for how you feel about this case, because people who believe the FBI is withholding names of like a pedophile ring focus on the first half, and people who don't focus on the second half. We know Alan very well. We covered very, very closely Virginia Giuffre's accusations against him. He came on the show when it was in its infancy, and we did a very deep dive into all of it. Alan has been totally exonerated on those accusations. He disproved this woman's accusations with actual receipts and plane tickets and so on. None of it held up. And ultimately, not surprisingly, she withdrew her suit against him and confessed she may have confused him with someone else, which is the best you're going to get as a guy who gets accused in these cases falsely. But we reached out to him about this soundbite, and he said, I did not talk about a client list. He said to us, let me tell you what the situation is. There are redacted statements in the FBI's file by the accuser, the same woman who accused me, Virginia Giuffre. In her statement to the FBI, she never mentioned me because she never heard of me. She didn't know me. But in the statement to the FBI, she did accuse a bunch of other people, and their names are in the report. But the report has been redacted. That's been censored, kept secret. I've seen it, however. I do know who's in that list. And I know a couple of other people who have been accused as well. I don't know whether or not they actually did anything wrong. I know they were accused mostly by the same woman who falsely accused me. We're talking about Virginia Giuffre. And one of the things that's been suppressed is all the information that is negative to the accusers, the information that proves the accusers made up the stories. So it's much more complicated. There's no client list, he says. There are names of people who are accused, and there are names of people who falsely accuse them. That's all there is. It's a redacted FBI report in which Virginia Giuffre names people And I know who the people are, and the court has kept the list secret and has refused to unredact the list. Okay, so what he seems to be saying, guys, is it's not just Allen who was accused by Virginia, or Prince Andrew who was accused by Virginia, or Epstein who was accused by Virginia. The list goes on. But that, and there appears to be more than just Virginia as an accuser in these files. But she's got a very sketchy history with the truth. She's recently deceased. But there's no question Virginia lied about Allen. And I'm sure she did lie about others. And so he's basically saying the so-called files are more ambiguous than people who believe there's a mass pedophile ring would want you to believe. And Allen believes it should all be released, and that these other guys who get accused in these files should have to defend themselves the same way Allen had to by, disputing each charge. He doesn't like what's happening with either a court holding back redacted documents or the FBI just sort of saying in a sweeping manner, there's nothing to see here, move on. Viva, I'll start with you on it, and then I'll get to you, Dave.
Well, we're using this term client list in a very, convenient manner where it either has a strict definition that can be weaseled out of. So they say it's not a client list. I think everybody understands what is meant by the client list. Unindicted co-conspirators, or the actual clients of Jeffrey Epstein, not as said by Pam Bondi en passant for a Fox interview, as put to a letter that she signed to Kash Patel in February 2025, where she says, I've got a list of Jeffrey Epstein and his clients. That's what people want to understand and want to know here. Not whether or not there's a mass pedophile list and he had a client list. Here's Mr. Jane Doe's favorite, person, whatever. They want to know who was involved in this sex trafficking ring that involved thousands of people, that spanned decades, that warranted him setting up cameras in his island so that he could capture videos, not of himself only with these ladies, with these women and girls, but the people who went to his island. People have been told for years that there were unindicted co-conspirators, that there were other people involved in the sex trafficking. You don't go to jail for sex trafficking to nobody but yourself and then come out later and say, there is no client list.
The raw confrontation here exposes the hypocrisy of officials denying a client list, despite overwhelming evidence pointing to multiple unindicted co-conspirators, hinting at a massive cover-up.
There is no unindicted co-conspirators. And when Pam Bondi wrote in a letter that we have Epstein and a list of his clients, that she didn't mean a list of his clients. So whether or not it has the title client list, people, I say not have been led to believe, it only stands to reason from everything that we've known for the last decade plus. Other people were involved, as Dershowitz says, either as false accusers or as accused, because Epstein wasn't doing this for himself. The videos that they had at his place that they seized were not only of himself, they are ambiguous as to whether or not it was child pornography that was downloaded or produced. And now they just want to sweep it under the rug with an unsigned, undated memo uploaded to the DOJ after it's leaked to Axios. Don't expect anybody to believe that.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for Professor Dershowitz. He was my law professor, and you don't have to just trust or believe him about Virginia Giuffre's credibility issues, because prosecutors felt the same way. That's why she was not called to testify in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And so, yes, she did have credibility issues. And as far as what's still out there, one thing that I'm interested in is what's on the thumb drives that were taken from Jeffrey Epstein's apartment on July 6th and 7th of 2019, when the authorities raided his place and had to use a saw to get into his safe. And they recovered a bunch of thumb drives. It's not clear whether the contents of that have ever been disclosed. And as you correctly
Sorry,
said,
just to confirm what you said, Dave, because I lost it. Did you say at his place in Florida or his place in New York?
New York. This is from New York.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, there was a safe there, and they had to use a saw to get in it, and they recovered all these thumb drives, and it's not clear whether that's ever been made public. They found cash, diamonds, and passports, and these thumb drives. Now, part of the problem is that you're dealing with, as you correctly said, judges who have put a kibosh on it, as well as a decision by the FBI. I think the FBI's decision is more discretionary because they are trying to protect names of victims, child porn, and all these things that they don't want disclosed. If there are names of individuals who are directly tied to this, then it should be disclosed. And even if there are names of people who are affiliated, like in the Black Book, who are not part of Epstein Island, I think the public is sophisticated enough where if you release everyone's names, they can sort out who was part of the pedophilia ring and who just was an associate, someone who knew Jeffrey Epstein. Just because you're in his black book, just because you knew him, doesn't mean you're a pedophile. But I think the FBI and the Trump administration is being very careful about that. They don't want to tar people who are not guilty of any crimes, and perhaps the president himself is concerned himself being mentioned in that same category, even though there's no proof he committed any of the crimes. So I get why they're very careful, but until you be more transparent, you're going to have all these questions out there and all these bloggers, and Viva is right to ask these questions. And so they're going to have to do something because this story is not going away.
There's a woman, I want to make sure I have her title correct. Her name is Sigrid McCauley, and she's an attorney representing people who are suing Epstein's former accountant. This is one of the last Epstein cases that's in federal court. She went on News Nation, spoke to Elizabeth Vargas, I think on Wednesday. And here's what she said. Take a listen to SOT 4.
What's really just astonishing about this recent disclosure from the government is that they know they are sitting on a treasure trove of information and they're not turning it over. And I've worked on these cases for over 10 years now. There's a plethora of information that the public has not been able to see relating to Epstein and his co-conspirators.
What kind of information?
All kinds of information. I mean, certainly if you look at what the government recently disclosed, the first time Pam Bondi came out and gave us some information, you'll see a list where they took multiple computers, multiple items from the houses. You know, what was on those computers? The public has not seen that. What do the financial records tell us? Do they tell us that money was being given to him by certain individuals, that money was flowing out to certain individuals? All of that is critical for the public to be able to know.
That was a very good last question there, Viva.
Yeah, it's that people were involved in this. And we know that video was seized, and now we're led to believe a decade later it was only child pornography and only for Jeffrey Epstein's personal pleasure. I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test. And it's not to hold people to their statements before they were in office. I happen to personally believe Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, what they said for years, what Kash Patel said very recently, December 2023, there's a list. Bill Gates, you don't think Bill Gates is lobbying, the government to not release the list? The bottom line is, who went to the island? Why was Ehud Barak visiting Jeffrey Epstein 30 times after he was a known convicted solicitor of child prostitution? Ehud Barak's explanation, I didn't know that he was convicted. My goodness, I do background checks on babysitters. I don't believe that the former prime minister of Israel didn't do background checks on Epstein. And we're sitting here after years and decades of this. Trump promised to, declassify the information. You have Bindergate. You have Bondi on letters saying a list of Epstein's clients. Then you have the Bindergate, which humiliates a bunch of influencers. And then we're told phase one has now turned into nothing. Go home. There's an unsigned memo saying it was all conspiracy, and anybody perpetrating or perpetuating this right now is doing a disservice to the victims and the government. I mean, I don't know how you expect people to believe that, even if it's true. 10 hours of footage of a cell, and we still have questions as to whether or not it's even the right cell, is not going to confirm that Epstein killed himself. And even if you have 10 hours of Epstein's cell showing nobody went in and checked on him every 20 to 30 minutes, a man who was on suicide watch 20 minutes earlier, itself is a conspiracy. So, being told to sit down, be quiet, and stop asking questions is itself a conspiracy.
This piercing question underscores the ongoing suppression of inquiry and the chilling effect such silence has, ultimately feeding the very conspiracy theories it aims to dismiss.
What do you make of that, Dave? I mean, I know you've been somewhat defensive of Pam Bondi, who you know as a former Florida attorney.
I believe she misspoke, and I think I believe her when she says that what she was referring to was the file was on her desk, not a client list. There is no evidence that there's a client list, the list of all the Johns out there. I mean, if that existed, Ghislaine Maxwell would have given that up in exchange for her freedom. There's been no evidence. And I also looked to the reporters who were the first ones, the Julie Browns, who helped break this story again, at least put it back in the public's consciousness, Tara Palmieri and others who are close to it. And they have said there is no client list. So there's no evidence of any client list. So I think that the sin of the administration perhaps is trying to appease the conspiracy theorists. And now when you're in the role of being in government, you have a different role than you were when you're a blogger. When Bongino and Kash Patel were out there blogging, yes, you can help perpetuate conspiracy theorists. But when you're in charge, you got to deal with facts, and they're dealing with the facts.
The Epstein saga isn't just about one man's crimes, but a systemic cover-up shielding numerous alleged perpetrators and false accusers. Hidden files, redacted reports, and reluctant officials keep the public in the dark, while the debate over client lists rages on. Transparency remains elusive, and until the truth emerges fully, suspicion will grow. Drop your take below. Should all files be released, or is secrecy justified?